He wore the most powerful crown in Europe, yet his soul yearned for a crown of thorns. A monarch who commanded mighty fleets, only to find his true destiny in the chains of a desert prison, and ultimately on the altars of heaven. This is the epic paradox of Louis IX, the king who became a saint. Born in 1214, Louis was destined for absolute power, but born into an age of turbulence. The sudden death of his father shattered his childhood before it even began. The kingdom was thrust into mourning. At just 12 years old, the overwhelming weight of a fractured France fell upon his small, trembling shoulders. But he was not alone. His mother, the formidable Blanche of Castile, became his fierce shield against the wolves of the court. Ambitious barons saw a child on the throne, not as a king, but as prey. They plotted in the shadows. Forced to flee in the dead of night, the young king learned a cruel lesson early. A crown is often a target. Yet it was the common people who marched with torches to protect their boy king, a bond forged in darkness. Under her mother's watchful eye, he endured a terrifyingly strict devotion. Her words echoed in his mind, "I would rather see you dead than commit a mortal sin." He was molded not just to pray, but to fight. The boy was transforming into a warrior. As he came of age, the frightened child vanished. The true reign of Louis IX had begun. He married Margaret of Provence, securing a delicate peace and a lifelong partner. But behind heavy palace doors, a fierce, silent war raged between the two women who loved him most, his wife and his mother. Louis sought to be the ultimate arbiter of justice. He was not just a ruler for the nobles, but a king for the poor. Meanwhile, in the East, the Byzantine Empire was drowning in debt. They possessed the ultimate treasure, but lacked the gold. They offered Louis a relic beyond price, the very crown of thorns worn by Christ himself. Barefoot, stripped of royal velvet, the king carried the relic into Paris himself, a display of absolute humility that stunned Europe. To house this divine treasure, he envisioned a masterpiece of light, glass, and stone. For years, the greatest masons of the age toiled under his command. The Sainte-Chapelle, a reliquary large enough to walk inside, the physical manifestation of a kingdom touched by God. Under his iron yet just rule, France entered an unmatched golden age of peace. But in 1244, a severe, mysterious illness brought the king to the very edge of the abyss. His breathing stopped, the pulse faded, the kingdom held its breath, waiting for the end. Suddenly, against all medical odds, his eyes snapped open, and in his first desperate breath, he made a vow that would change history. He took the cross. He would leave his golden realm to lead a new crusade. His mother wept bitterly. She knew the sands of the East were a graveyard for arrogant kings. Driven by holy obsession, Louis engineered a miracle. He built the massive port of Aigues-Mortes entirely from the swamps. It was the most organized, lavishly funded crusade the world had ever seen, a floating city of holy warriors. He bid a tearful farewell to Blanche. Deep down, they both knew they would never embrace again. 35,000 men sailed into the terrifying unknown. The strategy was bold and clear. To capture Jerusalem, they must first pierce the heart of the Islamic world. The target was Egypt. June 124-9. The immense Crusader Armada shadows the shores of Damietta. Louis did not wait for the landing craft. Clad in full iron, he leapt into the crashing waves, leading the assault himself. Damietta fell with shocking speed. Crusader morale soared to the heavens. But hubris was their downfall. They ignored the wrath of the Nile. Massive floods trapped the mighty army for 6 agonizing months. When the waters receded, they marched toward Cairo, but the Egyptian mud and searing heat became their worst enemies. In the Muslim camp, Sultan Ayyub died, yet his brilliant widow, Shajar al-Durr, concealed his death, holding the fractured empire together. A local trader, blinded by French gold, revealed a shallow ford across the treacherous river. Louis's brother, Robert of Artois, crossed first. Disobeying strict orders, he recklessly charged ahead, hungry for glory. He plunged blindly into the narrow streets of al-Mansoura, straight into the jaws of a deadly trap. The gates slammed shut. The Mamluks, elite, fearless slave warriors, poured from the rooftops. The pride of French chivalry was butchered in the alleys. Louis arrived too late. He fought like a lion in the mud, but the momentum was forever lost. Trapped in the marshes, a silent killer stalked the French camp. Scurvy and dysentery began to rot the army from within. The retreat back to Damietta turned into a horrific bloody slaughter under a hail of Mamluk arrows. Sick, starving, and too weak to stand, the King of France surrendered his sword. The most powerful monarch in Christendom was now a chained prisoner in the house of Ibn Luqman. Yet even in iron chains, his unyielding dignity and silent prayers commanded the awe of his captors. Outside his cell walls, a brutal coup erupted. The Mamluk warlords assassinated their own sultan in a frenzy of blood. Covered in gore, they stormed Louis's cell, threatening to take his head. He looked up at their swords and did not blink. His pregnant wife, besieged in Damietta, negotiated an astronomical ransom, the wealth of an entire nation, to buy his life. Ransomed and broken, Louis sailed away, but his pride would not allow him to return to France in the shadow of defeat. Instead of Paris, he sailed to Acre, the crumbling remnant of the Crusader states. Stripped of his royal vanity, he labored like a common mason, carrying heavy stones to rebuild their shattered defenses. He played a desperate, dangerous game of diplomacy, seeking unlikely alliances with Mongol Khans and Muslim emirs. Then, crushing news crossed the sea, a black-sealed letter. His mother, the regent of France, was dead. France was leaderless. His soul was utterly shattered. The boy who relied on his mother was finally, truly alone. In 1254, he turned his ships westward, leaving his heart and thousands of his men buried in the sands of the East. Paris rejoiced at his return, but the king who came back was a ghost of the king who had left. He wore only simple black. He was haunted. He believed the disaster in Egypt was God's direct punishment for his own personal sins. He swore off luxury. Beneath his royal robes, he secretly wore a brutal hair shirt, torturing his own flesh for the salvation of his kingdom. He was no longer just a king. He was transforming into a living, breathing saint. He became a king of the people, famously sitting beneath a massive oak tree in Vincennes, dispensing raw, unfiltered justice to any commoner who approached. He struck terror into corrupt nobles, proving that no man in France was above the king's law. To the sheer horror of his royal court, he crawled on his knees to wash the festering feet of beggars and lepers. He championed the mind as well as the soul, funding the scholars who would build the legendary Sorbonne. He forged a stable gold currency, turning France into the undisputed economic superpower of medieval Europe. Monarchs from across the continent sought him to settle their wars. His moral authority was absolute. But in the quiet of the night, the map of the East called to him. The obsession to free Jerusalem had only slumbered, it never died. In 1267, frail, gray, and dying, he shocked his kingdom by taking the cross one last time. His closest knights wept. They refused to follow him, warning the aging king that this was not a crusade, it was suicide. But a saint cannot be swayed by reason. Against all counsel, the final, fatal journey began. Manipulated by politics, he landed not in the Holy Land, but on the blistering shores of Tunis, North Africa. It was the dead of summer. The African sun boiled the men in their iron armor. The wells were toxic. Dysentery and typhus swept through the camp like a scythe. The horrors of Egypt had returned to claim them. Tragedy struck the royal tent. His beloved son, John Tristan, born during the disaster in Egypt, died in his trembling arms. Grief, age, and disease finally broke the iron will of the greatest king of the Middle Ages. Louis collapsed. Knowing his time had come, he ordered his knights to lay him on a bed of cold ashes scattered on the dirt, a final act of supreme humility. He did not speak of his glorious France, nor his wealth. His final, breathless whispers were of Jerusalem. On August 25, 1270, a great silence fell over the camp. The king was dead. The era of the Crusades died with him. His flesh was left to the earth of Sicily, but his bones were boiled and carried back to the heart of the kingdom he built. 27 years later, the Church declared what his people had always known. Louis IX was canonized, a flawed crusader, a magnificent ruler, an immortal saint.